Welcome back to the Homes Podcast, episode 9. I'm Jerry.
I'm Dave. Oh, I took it from you. I stole your thunder.
You did.
Dave Kellogg.
Dave Kellogg. And we're two realtors who interview professionals in the area. Today we have a special guest. It's another Kellogg, and he's his dad. So I want to just spit some facts before we introduce Bruce. He has a hemp seed farm. I did see that. He's a master carpenter with 35 years or 50 years. You corrected me in home construction. He's also a member of North American Association of Appraisers and Inspectors, and you're also a part of the Stall Group. Bruce Kellogg.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Dad. How you doing?
Hey there.
How you doing? See, now it's fun again, right? We break the ice and put the smile, and we're ready to go. So, Dad, how'd you get into home inspection? You want to give us the history, the recap right here, and tell us why home inspections?
A life before David, and yeah, let's get into it.
Let's go way back. 50 years ago, I fell and broke my back.
Ooh.
And they said that everything would still work, but after you get older, it's going to hurt. So I had a chance, and I could put my tools away. So I went to school and graduated, and then the housing market died. So I never did get my tools away until I actually retired.
Oh, wow.
It's been a good run. So it's a fun. I really enjoy going in and exploring houses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's always a treat in most houses, in what I can find in there.
Okay. Let's dive a little deeper into that. So when you did hurt yourself, unfortunately, those are periods in times where sometimes we see the beauty in the struggle. So you learn a lot about yourself when you go through times like that. So what were the things that you do? Did you just start getting into carpentry work and being a carpenter, or how did you fall into things like that?
Fall into it. That's an alluding.
That's
Here we
a
go.
little
Good
bit
job.
that's a
Good
pun
job,
right there.
buddy. Yeah.
I had taken a lot of industrial arts classes in high school. I grew up on a dairy farm, so we had to learn to work with our hands. And I went in the Army. I went to carpenter school there. So it's something I've done always.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, a lot of kids nowadays don't even know how to build a tool shed. So
Well, that's really bad. That we need to bring that hands-on training back into the high school.
I agree. Yeah, maybe you're the first instructor to be in the high schools teaching that stuff.
I wish I had been. That was one thing I talked to myself about being an industrial arts teacher.
Yeah.
But the guidance counselor said, "Oh no, you're from a little bitty town," and he's probably right. That going from a class of 25 to a major university would have been a cultural shock.
Mm-hmm. And then you had this guy right next to me soon after. How was life having your son and then trying to balance, what you were doing, with the work you were doing on the side?
Well, luckily, I have a wife and he has a mother that's very supportive. And my job took me a long distance away. I was running 1,000 to 1,500 miles a week back and forth to work.
Wow.
And so I was there. I was not there in the mornings. So his mom would do that kind of stuff, and she'd get him up and get him to daycare or wherever. But I'd pick him up when I came home.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best jobs in the world.
Wow.
So I was asked at one point if I wanted to go into accounting, and at the end of the day, I'm no picking on accounting here, right? We need people in all fields to do good work, but I have trouble working hard and not seeing something done at the end of the day. So no matter how hard you work, if in certain fields you change numbers or whatever, and it may have a big impact, but if I don't see the impact, I'm not engaged, mentally and emotionally. So when you're building or fixing or renovating or whatever, you do that work with your hands, you reward at the end of the day saying, today I did this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's frustrating as heck to, if you're putting sheetrock up, you can spend one day in a room and sheetrock a whole room. You can spend the same amount of time in a closet. You know, a 3x3 closet where you're up there. It takes all day. It takes
I
all
believe
day.
it.
It's frustrating because you're like, well, yesterday we did a room with whatever we were doing, and I spent the same amount of time and effort, and I got a closet done. That no one will ever care because you fill it with clothes and boxes. You shut the door. You don't look at it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can cheat and do a bad job. Dad, you were both a union carpenter, which was absorbed several times through different unions, and you worked in the private sector. You did that for a very long time before you became a home inspector. What was it that said, okay, look, I build homes with tools every day. I want to start advising clients now about the homes that they are considering buying. What was that catalyst? What was the thing that said, boom, I think I want to do this. I want to do something different, or I want a different flavor, or what was it?
I think the biggest thing was that I watched the quality of the work.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a job one time, and my partner and I were working, and another team came up, and they told the boss, you need to get rid of Bruce and Debbie. We can do it faster. And Tom said, well, how can you do it faster than what they're doing? He said, we don't put as many screws in.
Ooh, that's a red flag.
Yes, but there are industry standards that say that you've got to put a screw in every so far, and that carries from that part on into the home inspection when I look at a metal roof. And I've been on jobs where a metal roof will get put on a 16-foot sheet with 6 screws.
Get out.
So that's top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right, one on each corner.
And that's it.
That's the size of a sailboat, 16 by 4.
And they flop in the wind, and people say, well, that's all it needs because I'm the boss here and I get to choose what I want.
God. So are you seeing nowadays a lot of people in the industry cut corners?
Absolutely. It's just we're not training these people. I eventually got into code enforcement, and that was an eye-opener. That when I was in school for that, I said to the state, we need to license contractors, because a realtor has to have a license. I have to have a license. The guy that cuts your hair has to have a license. So I said that to the instructor at code school, and they said, if you say that again, okay, sign of the cross, you'll be asked to leave the class because we don't have the time or the money to do that. Which I think it's a really disservice to the buying public.
So if there's no room for educating and licensing and continuing education, because you're talking about continuing education where we have to do 23 and a half hours every 2 years.
Every 2 years, yeah.
And home inspectors need that. And, if there's not a standard set of minimums and you're adhering to it and enforcing it and checking on it, it's easy to get wayward towards the lazy and inept kind of building practices, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't find time and money for that, who in the end is going to be paying more for that?
The buyer.
The buyer. Yeah. Whoever's paying for the work done, whoever's buying a house that didn't know that you can get away with 6 screws on a roof. Who's going to pay for that? When the roof blows away, who's paying for that? So we're all paying for it anyways. Would it make sense to unfortunately, I don't want to talk about taxes, but as we pay taxes, can we move a little bit from here to there and say I'd rather pay 2% more or 5% more on my labor as opposed to chase my roof down the road in the next storm? I mean, that we're paying for it either way.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So cool. Dad, when you go out on a home inspection, I want you to tell me who your client is, what responsibilities and loyalty you owe to who.
Oh, I owe all my loyalty to my client.
Okay.
Okay. 90% of my work comes from referrals from realtors.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do a bad job, I get a lot of referrals. If I do a good job for my client, then the realtors look at a home inspector and say, oh, he's a deal killer. We don't want to use that guy. But yet when they come to buy their own home, or have their parents buy a house, they call a good inspector that points things out. One of the things I have to be careful of is that I'm a small company, is that if I miss something, my client can sue me for it. And then if I might have to put an oil tank in. Well, if I'm going to put an oil tank in, I want it in my house, not in their house.
Mm-hmm.
So I do a very thorough job.
So I want to talk about that. So two things there that caught my attention. Clearly, we'll get to deal killer because that was one.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. 90% of your work comes referrals.
Mm-hmm.
So, which means that the agents are calling you up or giving their buyers a couple of choices, mandated 3 by legality, if that happens or not, whatever. Is there ever an expectation or any? How do you keep a referral partner happy, and keep those referrals coming? Because you can't bribe them, you can't waver in your need to provide a good and thorough service. So, are some agents just appreciative of a good, thorough home inspection, or? I know I didn't ask that question very well. It was wordy and didn't fit in the box of a good question.
And I can't answer that question very
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
It's a lot of it is personality. There's a lot of schmoozing involved.
David.
No, Dad can't.
David's a smoozer.
I could hire him. He can't accept. Right. So I could recommend my dad here as a home inspector. Wouldn't. But he couldn't accept. So, and the reason is, if he did his job, but you knew that there was a family tie-in, can you trust his work?
Yeah.
And
Kind of goes into conflict of interest and things like that.
I hired my dad to do my own inspections on my property. He did
course.
on the single family that we bought here in town, but I don't refer him out because no matter what his report says. Oh, you're related to the guy selling the house. Yeah. It's done. I mean, what grain of salt can you take?
Yeah.
It doesn't look dirty.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So we don't hire family. Right.
Bruce. Yeah. So when you're taking, because I work with a ton of first-time home buyers. So let's assume I'm a first-time home buyer, and you're taking me through the house. What is what are we looking for? What are things are you going to highlight that I should be aware of as a first-time home buyer?
The thing that I stress most in my inspections is safety. Okay, missing handrails, electrical systems, and of course all over condition. If you've got a leaking roof, it's going to be pointed out. One of the things that I find with first-time home buyers, they ask a lot of good questions, and I try to answer them truthfully. Sometimes there's no simple answer. Why does my house get water in the cellar? Well, does the land slope away, so that the house is the high point, or is it down in the dip so all the water runs down in? Is it at the bottom of the mountain? I call out energy. And I've worked with a realtor that one of her favorite terms was age appropriate. That means if you buy a house that's built in 1900, it didn't have any insulation into it, therefore I shouldn't be calling that out. Well, I have to inspect that house as if it was built yesterday. There's nothing grandfathered in. If you like cars and you like the 57 Chevy, that doesn't have to have seatbelts in it. But that house, when I inspect it as it was built yesterday, has to be up to current standards. Meaning it's got to have GFCIs in it. It's got to have should have proper width of stairs, or at least noted that it can't be modified. And just there's
I think you brought up
a whole list of
yeah.
and I have it there on the inspection agreement. What we look at, and I have to touch every one of those.
You're right. I think what you brought up which was a great point, is that a lot of homes in the capital region are older. 1900s. I've seen homes in 1860. So when you're looking at homes like that, are there any red flags that come across that you're like, maybe I shouldn't move forward with this as a buyer because it's almost 140 years old?
Well, one of the things I tell people, being it's 140 years old, if we had stood in that field for 140 years, we're not going to be perfect. We're going to have some sags and some aches
Wrinkles.
and pains.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And I've told people, there's something here. Well, make that the thing you dislike the most about this house. But I want you, when we're done, when I'm done with my inspection, I want you to be able to buy this with your head, not your heart. Step back, look at it, read my report, ask questions, and then go from there.
Right.
So what we talked about before the cameras rolled was if you have a document 50 to 100 pages and it's dry, it's not exciting, there's no story, there's no character development, it's not a book, but it presents like a book, 50 to 100 pages, you may not read that until you need to. Flooding basement, electric service goes out, whatever. It's almost always bad, right? So when
Not bad, informative.
Well,
That's
when
what I
you
would say.
need to read that in the middle of the night, it's a bad reason, right? So when I go to open the door and do home inspections, I follow, and my goal is to keep the buyer next to that home inspector the entire time, because what if I'm muttering, "Oh man, that doesn't need to go in the report," but what is going on here? Oh, no, it's fine. Hey, why were you looking at that like that? Why were you muttering to yourself? Well, it doesn't look like it was there originally, and it looks like there was maybe a break, but they sistered it with real dimensional lumber from like the 40s, so that broke 100 years ago, and they fixed it, and it hasn't moved since. Well, that's not a major, that's not a concern, that's nothing. It's a nothing, but you mutter to yourself, you talk to yourself, you say, hey, come with me, I want you to look at this. Hey, not that it's a concern, but do you know where your water shutoff is? No, because I stayed in the kitchen and played card games with Dave the whole time. I follow the home inspector because what are you going to do? Your buyer's going to stand in the kitchen the whole time and talk to me? No, I follow the home inspector, and I want it to go home inspector, and then the buyer, and then I'm behind.
Correct.
But if I stay in one place, they know me. They don't know the home inspector. They might want to talk to me, and that's not what we're here for, right? We're here to find out where safety features are. We want to hear, hey, where the shutoffs are. It may not be a safety or on the report. There's no shutoffs or access to the back of the shower. But one day the shower head's going to fall off, or the valve body's going to stop working. You're going to want to shut water off. It's much easier to shut it off when you can plan on it than not. And that might be something that may not go in a report by any inspector. I'm not calling out Dad, just keep pointing to him because he's here. He may not go in his report, but you can learn this stuff by following along.
Yeah.
And who would pay $500 for a home inspection to look at 50 to 100 pages they may never look at?
Yeah, no.
To talk to me about not sports, maybe the weather. It's. But that's it. That's a lot of money to not follow up on.
It is. I think it's another great point you're bringing up to the table. I mean, I've always told my buyers, stand right next to the inspector and ask any questions that come about, because the inspector is there for our to analyze the property with, like how Bruce said, with no emotion, just all logical. So at that point, you can make a better decision in regards to moving forward or not. Back to Bruce. I mean, I'm actively looking at a home, or I'm actively looking to purchase, 3 or 4 families. But is there an age limit into what I should consider before purchasing? Because like I mentioned, like homes are in the 140, over 100 years old. And I hear it from my mom sometimes. She says, that's too old. And I'm like, these homes have been here, and they look like they're here to stay. But is 200 too old?
No, but you've got to realize that 200, you may have some deferred maintenance in there. So you're going to have to get an allowance to cover that and be able or be ready to hire somebody to do that work. David's grandfather and I used to fight all the time. We'd laugh at they don't build them like they used to.
I hear that all the time.
Good and bad. Good
Yeah.
and bad.
Yeah, but a B-52 bomber can't fly, and a Bumblebee supposedly can't fly. Well, that house has been there for 150 years. It stood the test of time. Now you got to work with a little bit to bring it back up and get it back up to current standard. But we know that it's going to stay here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where a brand new house, some people just don't know what they're doing. You know, you see crappy workmanship. You see pictures on the internet all the time of it.
Mm-hmm. 6 screws in the roof.
Six rooms or standard company policy.
Yeah, well, that's how
Yep.
the boss was at the bar at the home show, so he didn't teach us anything.
Cool thing to go to, by the way.
Yeah, I might have to check it out.
Your contractors should be going to these things. Maybe it costs money to go. Maybe it's free. You know, they have a lot of advertising people there. I learned this really 10 years ago. I learned this really cool thing about, you know, what happens if your floors bounce. You know, you can add mass to them and take the bounce out, the treble bounce, like the high resolution, you know, bzz. So you add weight to them. But then what do you get? If it's too much weight, the floors move like a waterbed underneath you. Because now, it was really cool. I'm not a flooring guy. I'm not a structural guy. But
Yeah, me neither.
But it was really cool just to be presented this information. I was like, I never thought of that. You know, you walk in a room and the China cabinet goes.
That's pretty
How
neat.
do you fix that?
I'm gonna have to check that out.
It's so much good information put out there, and if you were hiring a real estate agent, do you want me to make sure I get at my minimum 23 and a half hours every 2 years? Would you want your home inspector to get his continuing education?
Absolutely.
Well, what if there's education out there that's not accredited? Is that still good information?
It is.
I want it. I'd love to take a client or a carpenter or a plumber to a trade show and you know, get coffee and spend 2 hours talking about stuff.
Yeah.
It's important.
You and I both.
Yeah.
We gotta set that up.
Yes. Now I want to talk about something that came up before show as well. Pass fail. We
Okay.
do inspections on one thing every single year, and it's a pass fail. It's our car. So what does it mean to pass a house on home inspection or fail a house on home inspection? Because there's no sticker you put in the window. The cops aren't coming by to make sure the sticker's red this year and blue next year and yellow next year, right? So in my mind, that's something that we use in our vernacular, but it's not really a great term when it comes to a house. I buy garbage. I buy houses that need a lot of work. If I asked any home inspector in the world, should I buy this? Be like, no, you should burn it down. It's horrible. But that's what I want, right? If you were to buy $1 million house, you'd want possibly less issues. But if that's in a $5 million neighborhood, and you've got some issues, and the price reflects condition, you know, perfect. You're stealing it. So I want to talk about then, you know, things that we would consider what makes something in our mind a pass fail. We have a $1,500 minimum.
It actually got switched to 2,000.
Thank God. I mean, 2 windows is $2K now if you hire the right company.
Yeah. But
Right.
you know, there's people that say it should be higher. But
So let's talk about what a major is versus a minor versus a maintenance
Let's
issue.
do it.
Let's talk about this. Dad, what would you find to be the most common couple majors you can think of?
and just to give people a little bit of background, anything that's a major item, it's any one item that's $2,000 or more.
So I can interpret that way. But let's say my outlet doesn't work, or my breaker box needs repair, and I get a quote for $1,800. But what happens if the breaker box is bad, and all the whole system incorporated with the electrical system is bad? Now I'm at $2K, where each outlet may only be $50. But if I had 50 outlets that all need to be replaced, GFIs and breakers that are bad, now I can consider that as a system. So interpreting wise, you can say the system.
It depends how Bruce writes the report.
It probably does. So, Dad, take us through some majors.
I think one of the biggest majors is the roof.
Okay.
You know, we don't maintain the roof until it starts to leak. Well, that's a pretty good indicator, you know.
Pretty good indicator.
We got water coming into the bedroom.
Yeah.
And the plastic that we put up on the ceiling won't hold it anymore. Another thing is the foundation. The foundation is worth a lot more money than the roof, because the roof you can just go in and replace it. Where with the foundation, you got to raise the building, you know, do dirt work and get pretty involved. But that's no reason to say that that house with a bad foundation won't be a good investment for you and your family. You know, my house had been maintenance free for 75 years. And last year we finally got the last of the roof on. So now we're good for another 30 years.
So with a major, so any major gives us as an agent a chance to cancel contract or renegotiate.
Correct.
Which renegotiating can go both ways. You know, we say, hey, I want to get this off. Be like, well, fantastic. You want $5,000 for the roof. During the time, we got 2 more offers worth $30,000 more. So you can have your $5,000 for the roof. We cancel the contract and go the other way. It doesn't mean we don't negotiate. Doesn't mean we don't do our due diligence and act in the best time. But every single time you open the door for renegotiation, you open the whole contract for renegotiation and or cancellation, right? So it can bite you in the butt, especially if you were like a first mover and got a good deal. But, you know, Dad, this is where I want to bring in Dad said deal killer earlier. A thorough inspection is a thorough inspection. Any home inspector is not making a ton of judgment calls. It's very black and white. Hey, the roof leaks or not. You take a look. It looks like you've got a couple loose shingles. It looks like you've got this or that. You've got moss, which means the moss inhibitor, which depending on the type of shingle lasts a certain amount of time. So you can make inferences, and I guess there is a small amount of judgment, but at the end of the day, it gives us something. It gives us knowledge, right? When we buy or sell houses for our clients, that's not our job. Is to know the age of a roof or to make sure that the well or septic tank works well. You know, we're not sitting there for 3 hours running water, right? So when I hear the word deal killer, in my mind, it means that the agent either overbought, spent too much on a house, and we can't really argue its value anymore, or we're unable or unwilling to negotiate based on the new information. And to me, that's not an inspector issue. To me, that's an agent issue. So I just find that to be, you know, a funny label, because I don't think it necessarily reflects on the home inspector, unless the home inspector has found a couple small things, like you need a GFI. Well, if you don't have a GFI and you drop a spoon and you'll die, you'll get electrocuted. Well, how many people have died last month in this house dropping spoons in a sink? Probably not. So I think also, if I was going to put that term on a home inspector, I'd say, how do you handle the good and the bad of a house? Do you give the right weight to the right things in that house?
That's a good question. Bruce?
That's a tough one. In my report, the way they're set up is that I go through and with different systems, and I write up, you know, I take a lot of pictures. And if you guys follow me through on an inspection, if I see something I don't like, I stick my finger in the picture and take a picture. Then when the pictures are loaded in, I look for my fingers.
And you're literally.
I never heard that before.
He's literally pointing to the
Yeah,
problem. Well, I
he
mean,
is.
how many pictures might you take in a home inspection?
I take 300 to 400.
So,
Okay.
so if you take 300 to 400 pictures, you may not know why you took a picture of that wall. There's a lot of pixels to look
Exactly.
at. But there's the issue, right?
Right there. Right there's the problem.
You must have the most famous finger in the country.
Well, it is my finger.
That finger is.
It's the finger.
After he broke his back, he became a hand model.
Yeah,
Very good. Very good.
And I like to use the term I observe. Okay. And in my inspections, there's no pass or fail. It's like going to the doctor. The doctor looks at you and says, today you're in this condition. He wishes he had a crystal ball. You know, well, you've got a heart murmur. It could last another 75 years. Okay. I don't have that crystal ball, but I do have 50 years in the trades. Ask the question again.
we were talking about. Well, let's talk about the crystal ball piece. You can't do destructive tests on a house. If I'm looking at a 200-year-old house that Jerry's looking at for a nice investment, it seems to make money, and the electrical's been updated. Is there not been tube in the house?
Could be.
Could be.
Could be.
What you think? If you can't guarantee that something's behind the wall, they didn't just junction off in an outlet. There could be not been tube in the house.
Could
you
be.
observed that it's been updated. Unless you have evidence and proof and pictures and whatever, you can't go in a house and rip drywall off.
No.
Yeah, you won't know.
No.
So do I know that? What if there is a really slow tub leak, and it's getting just enough moisture in on that stud material to bring in wood destroying insects? Can you rip open all ceilings underneath the tub?
No. I can use a probe. I use a screwdriver. Okay. And then recommend that they get somebody else in, to do further testing, further inspections.
What's the wording you put on a report for that? Confer a licensed professional or something like that?
Yes.
Or refer to a licensed?
Refer.
Okay.
In a doctor terms, I'm a general practitioner,
I see.
and I would refer somebody to a septic system contractor.
Yep.
Yep. So you work a lot in the country, so you don't do a lot with 2, 3, 4 units every single day.
No.
What are the challenges? Because we're going to have people that don't buy in the city of Schenectady.
Correct. Yeah.
You can't force them to, though it's a great place to live. What are the things you might find in the country that you do tests for that maybe someone that's lived in New York or lives in Schenectady or whatever, they may not know you might want to test for? Or what aspects or systems do you inspect on the regular?
I regularly inspect septic systems with sewer dye.
Okay.
I put test dye in a toilet, put 75 gallons of water per bedroom down the system, and then go out and look on the lawn to see if the dye has come to the surface.
So in this case, snow can be your friend on that.
It can be, because when you're walking a grid back and forth across the lawn,
Yep.
and you step in that snow, if your footprint turns yellow, you know you've got a problem.
Not from a dog. That's the color. That's the color of the septic dye test. But it's interesting where that might be helpful. But how do you inspect roofs when there's 6 inches of snow like we got yesterday?
Can't.
Can't.
But what we do, though, on a day like today, is you go through and you look for snow on a roof where there's no snow. Now, this house has 6 inches of snow onto it. This house is bare. This house is losing heat.
Yep.
And while you're out looking, Jerry, that you look and you say, well, that house has got snow on the whole thing except for that one little spot. That means that there's a bathroom vent or a light fixture that doesn't have any insulation over it, and the heat is going right up through.
Or some insulation fell through. I like it when you go to a really well insulated house, and you can see the studding on the roof, and the studs have a dip, meaning that roof is so well insulated that there's more heat lost through a 2x4, 2x6, or 2x8 than the roof, and that's super cool.
That is.
Right. So when I want to go to an area and I want to say, hey, is this area being upkept? One of the number one things I look at is the roof, because if you can't afford to keep a good roof on your house, to keep water out, to stop your house, the biggest expense and the biggest equity piece in your whole life. If you can't keep it dry, that's a bad sign.
Yeah.
So I love going to a place where you see 3 roofing trucks just ripping off old roofs. I'm like, yeah, there's money coming in.
There's money. Yep.
Because I'm serious. Like, imagine not changing the oil on your car.
Oh my goodness.
Sucks, right? The idea. Oh, how long has it been? Oh,
I don't know.
it was a 3,000 mile oil change with 30-year roof.
Yeah.
I'm at 90 years on a roof. I'm at 9,000 miles. You're like, no, that's no good.
You don't want to be that person.
But I still see diamond tab on roof. It looks like it's a diamond, and the it's got like fish scales on the back. That roof they haven't made since the 70s.
Well, I didn't know that.
They're right there at 70s on something like that.
60s, 70s,
60s.
yes.
So those are 50, 60-year roofs. And you can't buy them anymore because they're too good. They last too long.
Birds stop making them.
Yeah.
Another thing in the country we look for are buried oil tanks.
Oh, that's not an issue. It's in the ground. I'm leading this.
Well,
It's a lead.
yeah,
I know it is.
You know, but
Environmental.
Yeah.
oh, if they leak,
Yeah.
it can be $20,000 to $30,000
That's what. Yeah.
to get that taken out. And the last I knew, the closest place to get that soil remediated was in Buffalo.
So you're talking they dig it out,
dig it up,
They dig the dirty dirt, oil-infused dirt, and they ship it
You do have
6 or
truck
7 hours away.
and take it to Buffalo.
Wow, that's a process.
It is.
That's money.
Yeah.
What if I snap the fill and burp valves off and I put a potted plant on top?
I didn't hear you say that, but it takes care of the problem.
It does, except now with the new NAR rules, I believe you have to do
PCD?
the property condition disclosure,
Yeah.
and you are not allowed to offer $500. Because if I had done that, I would pay $500 not to have that liability over my head all day. So in my mind, that's actually a good rule to have.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's your grandma's house and you haven't been there since you were 4 and she made cookies, how are you going to know the condition of her house?
You're not.
It's been a long time since you had those
been a while.
cookies.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to know her fuel source?
Mm-hmm.
How are you supposed to know how old the roof is? So there's some issues with that, but
Well, things with age, one of the things that I recommend to my clients is that when you replace a furnace, right on the front of it with a Sharpie,
yeah, label.
installed, put in service, pressure tanks on water systems,
Sure.
water heaters. It's yours.
Yep.
Put the date onto it.
I love when I see it when I walk into a showing or I see the date. I'm like, okay, it was replaced last year.
I also like labeled electrical boxes. Thank God whoever does that. Like you open the
Oh.
thing and you know where it is. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, what's this? Go beep, beep, boop, boop, boop,
Yep.
boop. Your neighbor's garage is going up and down because you don't want me to. Yeah, no, I like it.
Okay, Bruce. So we have what to look for when we're in the country: roof, septics, right? Leach fields, and buried oil tanks. Is there anything else that we should be looking for?
Probably the water runoff. You get in the country and people will build a house at the bottom of a hill. If there's not a diversion ditch, a swale around the house, you've got all that water coming down off the mountain down to that house, and it's got to go somewhere. If you don't have it diverted,
It's going into that
it's going to
foundation.
end up in your basement.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good one.
When I talk to people about water, I say I know 2 things for sure. Water runs downhill and it gets bigger when it freezes. So don't turn your heat too low, and make sure that when you put gutters on a house, right? Absolutely put gutters on a house, and make sure that you are not the lowest point in, let's say, 5 feet around. If I can go about this and your house is the lowest point at any part of that, that's where the water's going. And there's, you show me where it doesn't run downhill, I don't want to move there. Right. All right. So what else? We want to hit one more quick thing or anything? I mean,
That was a wealth of knowledge from Bruce. I mean, I learned a lot today.
Oh, one other thing for home inspectors. Once they're done inspecting that house, they cannot ever work on it.
and Dad brings that up because he does both inspections and carpentry and repair.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
why would that matter, Dad? Why would one thing lead to the other?
Well, I'm a contractor. I'm going to go in and I'm going to inspect Jerry's house, and he's going to get 3 prices to get it fixed. Let me see those bids when you're done. I can beat them. Well, that's good, except for the old girl that you just sold the house to. She didn't need a new roof. So you sold her, you gave her 3 names. She contacted the 3 of them, and then she called you, or you called me, and I put the roof on, and you didn't need it. That's pretty unethical.
Yeah.
Selling a product, an unneeded product.
Yes.
Yep. There was one more thing I want to bring up, Jerry, because you brought this up, and it
Shoot.
touches home for me.
Shoot.
Age of a house. I buy garbage. We talked about that. I do full gut rehabs. I would much rather have a full gut rehab that's 150 years old that I'm about to finish than a house that was built 20 years ago that, you haven't been in and you haven't had the right eye and there hasn't been updating. And over that time, someone comes in and fixes switches and watch Bob Vila and watched a couple things and
fun,
did stuff.
yeah.
I'd much rather every now and then start with a clean slate than have a property that who knows what's happened in the last 25, 30, 50 years. Right? So now if I did a full gut rehab, so if you have a house that's 50 years old and mine's 120, but I did a full gut rehab finish in June, how old's my house?
120.
Is it? because every single thing in there except 2 load-bearing beams in the foundation is 6 months old. It's tough now. It's tough. But then you got to trust the builder. You got to trust the renovator. But you never met the builder for the 50-year-old house, and you never met the builder for the 120-year-old house.
It's true.
And who knows if they put a roof on the first day it leaked, or 2 or 3 years after it leaked, and it looks good today, but we don't know what's up there.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go now throwing the question marks back in the air because you can't do destructive tests. But yeah. Oh, Jerry, when and under what reason would you not do a home inspection for your client? Or would you recommend they don't?
I always advise doing it. I mean, if you're, like yourself or like Bruce, if you've been in it for many, many years and you know what you're looking at, then, so be it. Mm-hmm. But once you say, hey, I'm not doing inspections, you're removing, wanting to negotiate if something comes up, you're removing everything in regards to wanting to find out what else is there, what's up with the property that you don't know of. Because like you said, we don't see behind the walls, but sometimes if you're looking to buy, you lead with your heart and not your head sometimes. Yep. So you need someone who can always look at it from a different perspective.
So in my mind, the only time I would change that answer is when the buyer is an experienced investor and their plan is to rehab it thoroughly. Right? If they're an experienced investor and they're buying a single family home for themselves and they're paying market price, top dollar, inspect it. I don't care. Because there's we have to separate heart and mind. Yeah. And when I go into a house, like Dad inspected my single family here in Niskuna. I'm like, Dad, I can do work. And I remember asking him, we're in the basement, Dad, do you see any reasons why I shouldn't buy this house? And I was like, no. I'm like, done. Perfect. But I wanted to get a professional opinion other than what my heart was telling me. Mm-hmm. And I think any agents that's not putting that out there as like a status quo, we're doing inspections, we're keeping our mortgage contingencies, we're keeping our rights to our clients intact. I think agents that aren't doing that really are doing disservice long term.
I agree.
I think it will bite them in the butt.
Question. Dad, did you charge him on the inspection? You had to.
I gave him a house, and I worked on that house so long.
I hope you did.
We were well compensated.
Wow. Jerry. Ouch.
I'm kidding.
I think one of us a birthday present.
Yeah. There you go. Cool. Well, thank you for coming on, Bruce, on short notice. I appreciate your expertise in the field. Your son seems like he learned a lot from you since you've had him. So
yeah. Dad, thank you for coming up. I know
it's my pleasure. Trip, just in closing from my part. Yeah. So when you get your inspection, ask, and I tell my clients as we walk through, ask questions. I want questions. As I stick my finger out and take the picture, I ask why. Okay, we've gone through a lot. I'm going to have your report to you. I'm going to upload it to you in the mail. You'll have it in 2 days. Call me. Ask questions if you have any.
Now, who owns that report?
My client does.
Can I get it?
Are you the... If they give me permission.
Okay. So at the end of every home inspection, I say in front of the buyer, in front of the client, I say, do you give me permission to have your home inspector email that to me so I can go through it with you as well? And I just want to give an eye. And if there are issues, do you give me further permission to send that over to the other side to leverage to negotiate on? And that's how I finish everything. I know Alyssa's going to watch this, I hope.
You and I both,
and she's going to be like, boom, there it is. Yep, I have that same, it's just canned.
You have to always ask for permission for that report.
Because it's not his to give. He doesn't own it.
And if the other side, if the seller side calls and says, tell me what you found, I'm sorry, I can't do that. You're making me put my license in jeopardy.
Correct.
All right.
Bruce, where can we find you? And do you have a contact information?
I do. You can find me at Bruce Kellogg at 607-316-3332. I live in Bainbridge, New York, which is between Oneonta and Binghamton, and I will travel the state.
Okay. Guys, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's call it a day.